Gaming is fucking insane right now. So much good stuff going on. I probably should be talking about how Elden Ring just came out and how it's probably already sealed itself Game of the Year. Or how Horizon Forbidden West came out just over a week ago and it's already PS5's second best seller. Or how the PSVR 2 was quietly revealed last week. Or how CD Projekt Red just pretty much shadow dropped the next gen upgrades for Cyberpunk 2077, and to everyone's surprise, it actually fucking runs really well and looks really good now on next gen consoles. Or of course, the biggest news of all, Klonoa is coming to the Switch. But no, today we aren't talking about any of that shit, because tomorrow Shadow Warrior 3 is being released, and I have been extremely lucky to have been playing it all fucking week. Well, apart from the last 2 days, because I've been on Elden Ring non-stop, but other than that. But anyway, you know, back to Shadow Warrior 3. Let me tell you something about this game. It's fucking mental. Those of you who've played the previous entries will know the score here. Fast-paced, horde-style combat with more dick jokes than this guy's inbox. I have done a written review on Shadow Warrior 3. You can find that over on New Game Network. I'll leave a link in the description. But since you're already here, today I'm bringing you the ultimate encyclopedia on the 10 different demons that you'll be absolutely fruit ninjaing in Shadow Warrior 3. And trust me, some of these are fucking insane. And before I start, use your common sense. I'm not going to be spoiling any of the game's plot or the ending or anything like that, but I will be showing the 10 enemies that you're going to face in the game. So if you want that to be a surprise, then, you know, turn it off. Alright, so the first enemy you're going to come up against are these guys. Shogun. Quick disclaimer, there's probably going to be at least a few of these that I pronounce wrong. So these guys are the scrubs of the game. They aren't going to cause you any trouble and they can be killed with a single headshot from any weapon in your arsenal. However, my preferred method is Fruit Ninja. As you can see, these guys are pretty docile. In fact, I'm not really sure that these guys even can kill you, even, you know, if you just let them. Hi, Chi. There are a few different subtypes of these guys. Some of them will have elemental barrels strapped to their backs, which will cause an explosion on impact. But really, they do more damage to the enemies around them than they do you. Like, they pose as a threat when they've got the elemental barrels on the back, but really, they're just something that you can utilize to kill more enemies. The most irritating of them all, though, are these guys who scream and run towards you in huge packs, then explode when they get close to you. Best to deal with these guys from distance. Performing a finisher on these guys will give you a health buff that adds 100 to your max HP. You'll only need one finisher bar full to execute these guys as well, making them more of a handy tool than an enemy to be feared, especially later in the game when HP becomes more of a precious resource. Kugutsu. Look at this guy. You know what it is that really creeps me out about these guys? It's the way they just stand still, staring. Everything in this game is moving at high speeds, no more so than yourself, but not these creepy bastards. Ugh. These can pretty much be considered scrub enemies as well. They're weak and they won't cause you any real problems. Sometimes you'll find them floating around with balloons on their back, but I mean, they aren't even threatening on the ground, let alone in the air. Their only attack is to throw ice cubes at you. Ice cubes? Probably not the ideal job being a demon, is it? For those guys. Better off in a bar. Or a minor injuries ward. Anyway, if you hit these guys with a finisher, you'll be rewarded with the game's first gore weapon. It's called Brain Freeze, and it's literally a frozen brain. Throwing this at enemies will produce an ice explosion on contact that will freeze any enemies within the blast radius, allowing you to smash them into cocktail ice. Oni Hanma is next up. These are the first brutish enemies that you're going to come up against. Big boys who wield this huge hammer-like fist. And when they smash the hammer down on the ground, it sends a wave of surface cracks your way that can deal quite a bit of damage. So be sure to utilise the dash function early to get used to using it in combat, because it will be a handy tool. Especially as the game progresses and you may have 4 or 5 of these to deal with at once. Since these guys are pretty slow and their range attack is pretty easy to manage, my advice to you is keep your distance where possible, because a bonk on the head from one of these guys is going to deal significantly more damage. But luckily, you can take that great big hammer attached to their fist and make it your own. You know what they say? If you want something, go out and literally rip it off the body of those that possess it. Unlike the Shogun and the Kugutsu, you'll need 2 full finisher bars in order to perform a finisher on these guys. But this hammer is lethal, and considering it will absolutely pancake anything and everything in front of you, it's well worth it. You actually get it for 10 full seconds as well, which might not sound like much, but trust me, on this game you can do a hell of a lot of damage in 10 seconds. Laser Shogun. Not exactly in keeping with the other enemy names. Sounds more like an early 90s synth DJ. Laser Shogun. These things are the mechanical heads of ancient statues, and they have a metal face making them resistant to your bullets. They have a weak spot on their back, but getting to it is a pain in the fucking ass because they're always facing you. They have a piping hot laser beam that blasts at you and deals pretty heavy damage if it hits, but it's also pretty easy to avoid. Right before they fire the laser though, their metal face will open up, exposing a weak spot at the front which you can exploit. But of course you'll only get a couple of seconds to do this, so my advice is to use high damage weapons, like the Basilisk Rifle or the Crimson Bull Grenade Launcher, or if you're close enough, the Riot Gun will do the trick. The easiest and most effective way though comes later in the game. Once you've collected enough orbs to upgrade your sidekick, you can unlock electrocution rounds for it. It'll cost you 6 orbs in total, but these electrocute enemies, and when they're shocked it keeps them still, making it much easier to get behind Laser Shogun and exploit the weak spot. Much like Onihanma, a finisher on Laser Shogun will cost you 2 full bars of finisher juice, and you'll get easily one of my favourite weapons in the game, the Disco Grenade. Throw this bad boy down into a crowd of enemies and watch a sphere of spinning laser beams blast out of it and obliterate anything nearby. Magura Twins. These guys come in pairs, obviously. They're twins. They also have circular saws for hands and a huge spiral drill sat on their heads. They use the drill to burrow underground, and as they dart about under the surface they leave a trail of hot molten rock that causes a small amount of damage if you step on it. And obviously the longer you stand on it, the more damage it deals. When these guys do surface, they jump high into the air and sling their saw blades at you. The Magura Twins shouldn't cause you too many problems so long as you're using the dash feature to avoid their trails. But in the height of the game's overwhelming combat, you won't be able to keep track of where these trails are at all times, but luckily they have pretty obvious audio cues so you can tell when they're close and when they're planning to emerge from the ground. When they do, a few blasts with the Riot Gun should be enough to see them off. The Gore weapon costs 2 bars of finisher, and to be honest, this one's probably my least favourite in the game. Not in terms of the animation when you get the weapon, because the animation might actually be my favourite. Lo Wang literally pulls the drill out from their body and looks to bring blood, guts and a spinal cord with it. Very satisfying. The downside is the weapon itself. It's just the drill and it deals a lot of damage, but you have to have enemies close to you and it affects your movement speed, and you kind of slide around when you're holding it. It's definitely not bad, but it's not one of my go-tos. Seeking Shakira is next. Shakira, Shakira. These guys ain't all that, relatively weak, have no defences, and fly around in the sky, so you can always see them. Their weapon is this wand that fires bits of purple at you. I don't know what they are, but you can see them coming from a mile off, so you shouldn't have any trouble staying out of their way. They can be a nuisance in areas where you can trigger environmental stuff to take out enemies simply because they can fly, so they ain't on the ground. And obviously because of their airborneness, you'll have difficulty dealing damage with the katana. Aside from that, they have no defense mechanism and they aren't weaker or more resistant to any of your ranged weapons, so you can take these guys out with anything really. They have a pretty cool gore weapon. It'll cost you 2 bars and you basically pull an eye out of the top of their heads. This eye then grows itself some shuriken blades, and the thing follows you around, slicing through enemies that are close to you. The problem is, you're unlikely to find yourself using this one very often, not because it's not a good weapon, because it is, but simply because these enemies are best dealt with from range, and also they fly, so you won't find yourself rubbing shoulders with them all that regularly. And of course, to trigger a finisher, you need to be right up next to one of them. Slinky Jaku. For me, the most innovative looking enemy on the game, but also the most downright creepy looking enemy on the game. This thing is an accordion, or a jack-in-the-box with 4 human arms for legs and then 2 more arms and a head on top. And these are attached to what looks like an IKEA unit. Similar to the Magura Twins, Slinky Jaku's weapons of choice are circular saw blades. However, rather than throwing them at you, Slinky will erratically slink around the combat arena at high speed, leaving a path of these behind them, suspended in the air, an easy hazard to run into. They also come equipped with fireworks that will deal damage if they explode near you. Slinky Jakus aren't too much trouble to take care of though. A few shots will stop them running and they'll slink over, leaving their Slinky section vulnerable. Anyway, it'll leave this middle section vulnerable to a good old-fashioned fruit ninjaing. Slinky's gore weapon is a firework cannon that just continuously releases deadly exploding fireworks. Except now they don't hurt you for some reason. But we'll move past that. We'll look over it. When the gore weapon runs out, it lets off one big final firework with a more substantial blast radius. Hattori is up next. These are the coolest fucking enemies on the game. They have 4 arms and wield 2 short blades and 1 katana of their own. What's the 4th arm for? Get too close to them and they'll use these blades to perform a number of stylish melee attacks on you. They also have this spin attack which can do some serious damage if you get caught in it. The reason these guys are so annoying, you know, aside from their 3 weapons, is the fact that they can block incoming fire. Fire enough at them and it will stun them, leaving them vulnerable, but depending which weapon you use, it can take a little long. The sidekick and the outlaw are pretty much useless against them without significant upgrades. The right gun is the ideal way to take them out. Just 2 shots with that will stun them, leaving them vulnerable to attack. Hattori also has the best gore weapon in the game as well. Using 2 bars of finisher, you'll counter a katana attack by grabbing the katana, turning it on them, and gruesomely slicing them in 2. Then you'll have 10 seconds of basically Genji's ult from Overwatch, where you'll auto dash to enemies in your line of sight and deal massive damage by slicing enemies to bits. This thing will wipe smaller enemies with 1 swipe and larger enemies will need 2 or 3. It also just feels incredibly satisfying to do so. Chef Aburu Garuma is the second to last enemy that you'll encounter and unlock, and this thing is just pure fucking gross. It's some gecko looking character wrapped in blood-soaked bandages with a meat grinder on its belly. This gruesome chef carries a boiling pot on his back which is cooking up some nasty delights. Aburu will attack by leaning forward and ejecting molten purple balls of gack from his cooking pot that lay on the ground like landmines and will explode upon impact, dealing significant damage. Using the dash is going to be key when approaching him. Fortunately, he has no obvious resistance to weapons, he's just hard to get close to, so using the katana isn't going to be ideal. I've changed my mind. These guys have my favourite finisher animation. If you perform a finisher on these guys, Lo Wang will slice the head off this thing, pop it in his cooking pot and leave it to simmer. Once cooked, out will pop a hungry heart, which when thrown will produce pretty much Zarya's ult from Overwatch, the Graviton Surge. Somebody at Shadow Warrior HQ definitely loves Overwatch. It produces a gravity well which sucks enemies towards it, making them easy to blast to smithereens. The final enemy you'll encounter in this game is the Gassy Barbarian. This beast is massive, basically a big fat blob with some skinny mage looking thing stuck in the folds beneath his man breasts. The Gassy Barbarian has a Gatling gun strapped to each arm and has wings strapped to its back, so yeah, this thing can fly, and it'll attack by slamming onto the ground and excreting what looks like bright green bubbling stomach acid, and will deal pretty severe damage. The positives are this guy's so big that he's really quite hard to miss. The negative is that it takes a considerable amount of ammo to take him down. Performing a finisher on the Gassy Barbarian is the only enemy that will cost you 3 bars of finisher to execute. When you do, Lo Wang will fire his grapple hook down the throat of the big fat lump, and with a bit of resistance will pull out another 2 Gatling guns, ripping Gassy's head off in the process. Weird how it wasn't just the guns from his arm. Like, why has this guy got another 2 Gatling guns stuck in his belly? And how did Lo Wang know they were there? These 2 Gatlings, as you can imagine, are absolutely brutal and will tear through just about anything that stands in your way. So that's it. That's all the enemies that you're going to come up against in Shadow Warrior 3. There are 2 bosses as well, but I'll let you find out about them because they're their own entities and they're not part of the arena combat. You just need to get this game. You need to play it. And you need to see those guys for yourself. If you want to hear my full thoughts on it, then head over to New Game Network and check out the written review that I've done on it there. Also, if you pay for PlayStation Now, Shadow Warrior 3 is going to be available from launch on there, so you'll be able to jump right on and play that tomorrow. Anyway, that's it for today's video. As always, like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.